Hi, this is Mr. Elmhorst. Welcome back for a math lesson. We're going to be looking at writing and solving proportions. So we've been working with proportions, doing cross products, cross multiplying, dividing, but there's other things we can do with the proportion that we can use them as a tool in math to help us solve ratio problems. So first thing we want to focus on that proportions are made out of two equivalent ratios or two equivalent fractions. And as we learned in fifth and sixth grade, that the fractions are equivalent by factors using multiplication or even division between those fractions. So proportions can be solved using multiplication or division, and you can solve the proportion using one of these options down below. So if you know the factors or the multiples of the given ratio, you can solve the proportion by multiplying left to right or right to left. And you can also look within the fraction, look up and down. And if you see the multiple of the within the fraction, you can multiply going top down, up down, or even from down up. So let's just look at a couple examples here. So if we set up a proportion here where we have this fraction 3/9, and we want to make it equivalent to another fraction. So looking at the given fraction here, if we look from left to right, we can see that 3 times 7 is 21. So we use that same multiple down here, that same factor, and we can multiply 9 times 7 and complete the missing part for the equivalent fraction. So the other way to do this, you don't have to erase this. I'm just going to write it as an example. The other way to do it is to look within the fraction. So 3 times 3 is 9. And if you go on the other side here, use that same factor, go up from the top down, multiply 21 times 3, and you're going to come up with the same missing part. So this is a little more of the quick factor method to solving proportions. So here's another example. We look at 6 times something and then 5 times something to write an equivalent fraction. So 6 times 5 is 30, and 5 times 5 would help us solve. So the power of the proportion, if you know your factors, you know your multiplication facts, you can really solve proportions a lot faster than doing cross products, cross multiplying, dividing. So again, we can look at the given relationship here, and 40 divided by 5 is 8. And we go to the top side, we go up and we use the same factor, and we're going to be able to solve for the missing part. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. So, of course, if you don't know your multiple or your factors between the fractions or within the fractions, you can always cross multiply. Oh, I think I started going the wrong direction there. Start on the side with the unknown. So if we multiply 12 times 64 and divide by 48, that would help us solve. But cross products, if you cross multiply and divide, you're going to be dealing with bigger numbers. So here, if we know our factors, 48 divided by 4, 48 divided by 4 is 12. And we come down here and then we use that same factor. So 64 divided by 4, we look at multiples of 4. There's only one multiple of 4 in the number 6. So 1 times 4 is 4. We subtract, we have a remainder. And we bring the 4 down, and then 4 goes into 24 6 times. So using factors can definitely be a powerful tool when you're trying to solve proportions. Okay, so the last part of the proportionality unit, is we're going to be looking at many different contexts, and we need to be able to read through the context and pull the proportion information out of it. So writing a proportion, we're going to read and write the context words for what is being compared. So we're going to go through this word problem. So it's a study of population of frogs, and there's 200 frogs, and there's 14 out of every 70 frogs have spots. So there's context information. We have frogs, and then we get to the first part of the true given information where they're talking about spotted frogs specifically. Based on the results of the study, how many frogs in the population do not have spots? So now we have two different things that we're looking at. There's spotted frogs and the non-spotted frogs. So we go into the context, and we have spots as our given ratio or given comparison for the context, spots and not spots. So those are the two things there, and both of them are frogs. All of them together are frogs. So a lot of students want to take this 200 frogs and put it in here, but I'm going to say be careful. So a study of the population of frogs revealed 200 frogs revealed 14 out of 70 frogs. So 14 are the spots. So we got to connect that within the context. 14 have spots, and that's out of 70 frogs. So there's a sample, and then the population is 200. So the question is going to be actually over here. So there's a sample of 70, and then there's all of the frogs, which is 200. So within the sample, there's 14 out of 70 frogs have spots. Well, this is the first given ratio, but then the question goes to how many do not have spots? We have to do a little math here. We're going to subtract these two, 70 minus 14, to see how many do not have spots. And we're going to have to borrow. We cannot subtract 4 from 0. So 70 minus 14 is going to give us 56 frogs that do not have spots. So we use the spots information to help us find the not have spots. Now we're going to go over here to solve for how many do not have spots. So we have 56 out of 70, and that fraction is not directly comparable to 200. But if we use some of our skills from elementary school, 5th and 6th grade, then we can write an equivalent fraction over here to simplify that given fraction to see if it can help us solve using factors instead of cross multiplying and dividing. Well, 70 can be divided by 7, and 56 can be divided by 7. So 70 divided by 7 is 10, and 56 divided by 7 is going to be 8. So now we have a simplified fraction, and it's still equivalent. Now we can go back and multiply by 20 to get 200. And then we multiply 8 by the same factor of 20. And that will help us solve using factors instead of cross products. So 8 times 20 is going to be 160. So based on the survey results, how many frogs in the population do not have spots? 160 frogs are not spotted. Now, before I finish up here, I'm going to go back and just emphasize there are other ways to solve the proportion. If you don't know the factors, well, then you could have cross multiplied 200 times 56 divided by 70, and that also would have gave you 160. So both methods work. So option one, if you know your factors, use them to solve. But then option two, if you don't know your factors, well then multiply diagonally, and then you can divide by the other number using cross product method, and it's still going to give you the same result for the proportion. So go ahead, open up your journals, glue this into your journal, front to back, side to side, do not skip a page.